Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk to you about the correlation between chronically high blood pressure and erectile dysfunction and give you some clinically proven herbs to help. Now you might be thinking that an increased supply of blood or an increased force or pressure of blood could be helpful for something like producing an erection and maintaining it. In theory, it seems logical, but there are some negative consequences, some damaging effects of chronically high blood pressure when not treated. That being said, we should also understand that the blood pressure and its rising or falling is just an adaptive response to stress. So we don't necessarily just want to suppress how the body is handling the pressure of the blood, because that could also lead to new and perhaps even worse issues than the high blood pressure in of itself. So there's a couple of things we want to understand first and foremost about blood pressure. First and foremost, the regulation or the handling of blood pressure is just one of the many adaptive or regulatory systems that the body has, meaning that it fluctuates based on the homeostasis of your body. So for example, one of the major reasons that blood pressure becomes chronically elevated is due to chronic underlying stress. So like many other things in the body, in regards to the regulatory functions of the body, the blood pressure is going to rise in response to stress. And this is actually helpful. This is something that you'd want your body to do, because as your body becomes stressed or more aged, the body's metabolism starts to slow down, the cells function less optimally, and generally speaking, the whole body doesn't work as efficiently. So increasing the pressure of the blood in a stressed body can be very helpful. In many cases, it might save your life. There have even been experiments done where elderly people whose blood pressure didn't rise in proportion to them aging actually died significantly earlier than those whose blood pressure did rise as they aged. Meaning that if you're an older person, let's say you're in your 80s and you have low blood pressure, your blood pressure isn't high and rising, it can increase your risk for mortality or death. And this is due to the exact statements that I was just making. An aged person's metabolism and entire body doesn't function optimally. It's slower, everything's slowed down in the body. And increasing the pressure of the blood can help supply the various cells and organs and tissues with the nutrients, with the hormones it needs, with the energy it needs to still function. So you don't necessarily want to just suppress high blood pressure. What you do want to do is take a look at what's causing your blood pressure to be chronically high, especially if you're a younger person. So the truth is, it's actually normal to have high blood pressure when you're either older, so you're more aged, or if you're stressed. If your blood pressure is not rising during stress, it could lead to heart attack, stroke, and a wide variety of other issues. Again, it could even increase your risk for mortality or death. So you don't necessarily want to rely on medications or even herbs that would just suppress the blood pressure. This again could lead to worse symptoms than you're probably experiencing now. However, you will want to take a look at what's causing you to be chronically stressed. It could be a low salt diet. It could be dieting in general, doing too much exercise, or your exercise is too intense. It could be psychological stressors, sleep stress, environmental stress, etc. So the more appropriate thing to do, or at least the more well-rounded, intelligent thing to do, would be take a look at the underlying causative factors for the high blood pressure and modulate your lifestyle so that way your body's not in a chronic state of stress, increasing your blood pressure at a young age. Because there are consequences to chronically high blood pressure, especially more in youth. And by youth, I'm even referring to being in between your 30s and your 50s. And one of the things that can occur, and sort of the topic of this video, is vascular damage. Look at it like this. If your blood has an increased supply of pressure all the time, you could look at it as your veins being sort of like hoses and the blood being water. If the water or the blood is chronically flowing through your vascular system at an increased rate and pressure, causing your veins and your vascular system to bulge, it could actually lead to vascular and capillary damage that over the long term, as a consequence of chronically high blood pressure, could actually lead to a ton of different vascular issues. And one symptom of vascular damage could be erectile dysfunction. So remember, the basic thing you need for a healthy erection is good blood flow. But there are many things that come into play in regards to the physiology of good blood flow, especially to the penile shaft. A lot of this has to do with the proper relaxation of the smooth muscle wall or cell throughout the vascular system, or the veins that flow throughout the penile shaft. And if the blood pressure is chronically elevated, this can cause damage to the veins or the vascular microcirculatory veins in the penis, and it can also lead to them being incapable of relaxing. And if the smooth muscle cells in the penile shaft are incapable of relaxing, then they're incapable of vasodilating, because think about it, a constricted vein is going to be tighter and smaller. And this can happen over time in response to the high blood pressure. The vascular system wants to tighten up and constrict more, actually, to try to slow down the pressure of the blood if it's flowing chronically. So in fewer words, chronically high blood pressure can damage the vascular system directly, causing oxidative stress, but it can also impair the relaxation of the smooth muscle in the penile shaft, making your penis incapable of vasodilation that would ensure good blood flow. So what can we do about it? Well, again, we don't want to just rely on herbs even, or medications that suppress the blood pressure. Although this might be helpful in the short term, you're ultimately impairing an aspect of your body's innate intelligence. And again, low blood pressure, or not having that response of increased blood pressure in a stressful situation, could potentially lead to death, or again, some sort of heart attack or something along those lines. So you don't necessarily want to do that. However, what you can do, in addition to correcting and looking at underlying stressors in your life that might be causing that blood to boil, if you will, you can take a handful of different adaptogenic herbs that don't necessarily just suppress the blood pressure. They can lead to lower or more normal blood pressure levels by correcting underlying stressors, or more so physiological and chemical stressors. So that's what I want to share with you now, is a couple of scientifically proven herbs that can help modulate the body, meaning that it can help your body get back to homeostasis during a state of stress, so that way your blood pressure can regulate and normalize without necessarily having to just force your body into lowering blood pressure. Basically, these herbs in some way or another are having this adaptogenic or modulatory effect to help the body get back in a state of relaxation, calm, or equilibrium, so that way your blood pressure can normalize. And this can have a systemic benefit on the production of an erection, or if you're somebody struggling with erectile dysfunction, especially if you're somebody who has known hypertension. So the first herb I'd recommend looking into is a premier adaptogenic anti-stress herb, and that is rhodiola. Rhodiola contains active compounds known as salriticides, which have been found to lower blood pressure in diabetic mice. The second herb is horny goatweed, or epimedium. Epimedium contains a couple of different active compounds, particularly icaridicel and icarin, which are the major active constituents in horny goatweed that give it all of its effects. But in study, the icaridicel has been found to lower blood pressure, improve overall cardiovascular function, and even promote ventricular remodeling, which is basically the regeneration of the vascular system. So if the vascular system has become damaged via oxidative stress from chronically high blood pressure, or if you're diabetic, then this particular herb can actually help regenerate the damaged vascular system. So this could be a really great herb for anybody who has had erectile dysfunction for quite some time, or if you're diabetic or hypertensive. The third herb I'd recommend is a medicinal mushroom known as cordyceps. Cordyceps is a fantastic tonic because it actually promotes overall cellular respiration and the production of carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is actually the major component, not nitric oxide, responsible for the natural relaxation of the smooth muscle. And it's even been proven to lower blood pressure in hypertensive mice through its vasodilating effects. The fourth herb I'd recommend is schizandra. Now, schizandra is considered to be a premier sexual tonic, and it can be particularly helpful for high blood pressure and related erectile dysfunction. It contains lignans that actually have an anti-vasorestricting effect. So it's not necessarily a vasodilator, but it has a unique anti-vasoconstriction effect through its inhibition of the enzyme angiotensin, which is basically the enzyme that leads to vasoconstriction. And because of this effect, it's actually been proven to help regulate or normalize blood pressure in hypertensive mice. And last but not least, we have ashwagandha. In study, ashwagandha was found to improve diastolic blood pressure in hypertensive mice. And from my understanding, this probably has a lot to do with similar mechanisms to that of cordyceps. Ashwagandha improves thyroid function, and the thyroid hormone is actually the hormone responsible for the proper production of carbon dioxide, which, as we learned earlier, can help to relax the smooth muscle. So there you have it. If you're somebody struggling with erectile dysfunction, it's possible that even if you're not necessarily hypertensive, that you might be dealing with similar issues. And you don't necessarily just want to rely on herbs or medications that suppress the blood pressure. But now you have actually a handful of clinically proven herbs that help to modulate the body and sort of correct the underlying causes of high blood pressure without necessarily just having to lower the blood pressure voluntarily or involuntarily, I should say. So in other words, these herbs are sort of working with your body to get back into balance, to mostly cope with stress. And by managing stress and making your body less biologically stressed, it's having this beneficial effect on the blood pressure, which in turn down the line could be very beneficial for erectile dysfunction. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet already. And if you're interested in learning more about these herbs or even supplementing with them, we have a blog post written on this exact topic where you can look at the various clinical studies I was sharing and just dive into more about the functionings of these herbs. Or you can check out our online tonic herb shop. Both of these things you can find in the description box below.